Self-employment or employment. Should I hire staff members and tailors, or should I outsource that? Today, that's what we're going to discuss, and I guess let's start. Hey everyone, well, as you can see, I am on a new set today. The last two episodes I've had issues with my videos being blurry. I'm really hoping this time this is very clear. I had to change up to a more well lit place and also add a light to see if this works better. So this will probably be my new set for a while. So welcome to today's channel. I hope you've managed to catch up with basically this month's videos. I really try to answer a lot of questions designers get, fashion students get, generally questions that I get asked a lot. I just decided to do it. I know I have answered some of those questions before when I first started my channel, but I decided it's easier for me to just compile them because I do get those questions a lot, and it's easier for me to refer people to a resource. So today, this is also something that really challenges a lot of people, whether or not to get into being self-employed or employed. This is usually one of those big career moves, and sometimes you want to be employed in the fashion industry or you want to be self-employed. And also sometimes when you're running a business, whether to outsource work or to have in-house. So what I'll do is I'll just tell you the advantages and disadvantages and let you make up your own mind and weigh the risks yourselves. Before I continue, next week, after I did a poll on Instagram, a lot of you encouraged me to share the process of my ready-to-wear, making my ready-to-wear collection. So I am going to do that in the month of June, and I am also going to explain other ways people do their ready-to-wear collection, because the footage will exclusively be how I do it. And next week I will probably talk more about things to consider when starting your ready-to-wear collection, just so that you have a good picture, because I have done consulting for people with their ready-to-wear, and I've seen that people don't really understand how complex it is to do ready-to-wear, especially if you're not working with a factory. So I will explain that, and I'll also explain working with a factory, because there are some requirements you need to meet, especially their minimums and things like that, things to consider, like if you need to have patterns or not, if you have to, how much you pay extra if you have studied fashion and if you have not studied fashion. So watch out for that next week. But today let's talk about the benefits and maybe the disadvantages of being self-employed or employed. Let's start. As I start with the advantages, I'm going to probably point out the disadvantages right after, so I'll just run through the advantages. So number one, of course, is that you're in control of your time and also your schedule. So that is usually a very big advantage and a very big appeal to why people get into self-employment. So you can decide that you are running your business in a way that people have to book an appointment with you, and you schedule them. You can decide where you want to meet people. If you do not have an office, you could meet them in places like restaurants or their offices, or wherever it is, depending on the kind of business you are running. So that usually is a big advantage. Another one closely related to the first point is that you get to work where you want. Basically, that's more about, do you want to hire a space, so maybe an office. There's a lot of co-working spaces that have come up, and I think it came out from the need for people to have a meeting place if you're self-employed. Do you want to work from home? Do you want to sublet an office space? Do you want to work online? So that's another advantage, that you get to work where you want. Another advantage is that you're in control of your income. So that means you get to earn what you want. Of course, this all depends on the stage you are in business. The reality is when you start, sometimes there is barely any income, and there are entrepreneurs and self-employed people who have gone for even years without having an income. So you definitely have to think about your income. The beauty is that you can earn what you want, but I guess it also depends on how hard you're working. So that's another advantage. Another advantage is that you get to choose the people you work with, from the people you hire, and also the customers. I know sometimes people don't think about the customers, and I think people think there is this, you have to take every single customer who comes to you. Sometimes you can tell a problematic customer from the word go. So the advantage is that you can pick your customers and you can pick your employees. Of course, picking employees can be a very, very long road ahead, because checking qualifications, and maybe someone is qualified and maybe they are not gelling with everyone else. The goodness is that you don't have to really consult a lot of people to get the right employees, because remember, this is self-employment, this is not a company. Usually when you're a company, it means you have structures and you have other people in your board, and you have departments, so employing people becomes difficult. But when you're self-employed, you're actually in control of that whole process. So you get to hire the people you want, and you get to work with the people you want in terms of clients. Yeah. Another big benefit, at least for me, is that you get to do what you love. Okay, it's a given that sometimes, as much as you're doing what you love in terms of career and basically what you want to do, doesn't mean that you love every process, because there are some things that are involved in what you like doing that you find boring or tiresome or difficult, which is why you hire people to fill in those spaces. But either way, you do what you love. There are people who get into self-employment not doing what they love, and they do struggle, but you have a choice, because this is something you're trying to do. Okay, maybe some people don't have a choice. Some people, I know, especially in Kenya, it's very popular for people to get into self-employment because maybe they lost their job and they can't find a job, so they feel like getting into business might be easier. But I would always advise you, even if you've had to resort to self-employment as a way to survive, I would advise you, as much as possible within your control, try and do something you're familiar with, what you love, and not something you will struggle so much with, because now maybe you even have to pay someone to help you do things that you would have done if you just did something you loved. I don't know if that makes sense. Yes, so the advantage is that you get to do what you love. Lastly, which is one of my biggest pluses, is that you get to decide the dress code. I really just love dressing the way I like, and the beauty of being self-employed, I get to wear whatever I want. Of course, you have to consider sometimes where you're meeting people and how you're meeting people, but it's a free world, and I guess in time you'll know if something is working and something is not. But of course, if you have employees, you will definitely also probably dictate what they would wear. So for me, this is a big plus, because I think I have worked in a place where we're supposed to wear these branded t-shirts, and yeah, it didn't really appeal to me. It really frustrated me, and I'm not the kind of person who just goes with the flow and wear the t-shirt all the way home. I would probably change into something else anyway. So that's another advantage. So that's the last of my advantages. There are probably many more. If you have more that you think I have left out, please write them down in the comment section. But now I'm going to move to disadvantages. So disadvantages of being self-employed is that time is money. And the reason why that's a disadvantage is because every minute you spend not working means you are not earning. So it's sometimes very difficult to have a work-life balance where you are working in a place where maybe the there was a schedule and you knew what to do and you knew the timelines. Of course, you can come up with such a schedule if you're self-employed, but sometimes it's just the temptation of always working and working all the time. So that is the biggest disadvantage. Time management can become very difficult, and especially if you have family and friends that you need to spend time with and you sacrifice it for work. And also the fact that sometimes you get very important jobs in the middle of a very inconvenient time for your social life. So that's usually a very big disadvantage, but it's just about learning to set good boundaries, especially for your clients. Yeah, so that's one major one. Another one related to the first one is the possibility of irregular pay. So I face this a lot, almost on a monthly basis, where there are months where I earn better and there are months where I do not earn much. So it's about balance in the end, and it's about understanding the pattern of your business, which sometimes can take long. And also there's also this thing called the pandemic that affected most businesses, and so many other life things that happen that can still affect your income. So there's a lot of irregular pay. And let me just demystify something for everybody. I know there's this saying in Kenya that people who are in business always have money. The truth is, we probably are the ones who have least money. And most of the time, the end of the month, where most Kenyans who are employed get money, is probably the time self-employed people do not have money, because we are the ones who are paying the salaries for the employed people. So it's a myth. Business people don't always have money. Most of the time our money is tied up into various things. Like for me, most of my money is tied up on materials most of the time. So I just wanted to demystify that. Yeah. Another major one is doing your own bookkeeping. If you're employed, probably, unless it's your main job to do bookkeeping, there is usually someone who handles the bookkeeping, or there's a software that's used to do bookkeeping, which is actually a good idea for self-employed people to use software. I personally do not like it, but I know it's necessary. And there's also the option of hiring someone to do it, but sometimes you can't afford it and you just have to figure it out. So bookkeeping is one of those things designers and most creatives do not like doing. So I just thought I'd point it out, because bookkeeping, I understand that bookkeeping and accounts is two different things, but you need bookkeeping to do accounts. So even accounts actually needs an accountant. So that's actually why I have not said accounts. I have said bookkeeping. So bookkeeping is important even for your accountant to be able to use, because it's records of your orders or whatever it is that your business is doing day to day, but your accountant can be able to help with the numbers. So bookkeeping. One of the major disadvantages is not having workmates or just people around you who you can bounce ideas off of. It's one of the reasons why I join trade groups like She Trades and other groups, or even WhatsApp groups where creatives are in and all that, because it's a very lonely world out there, being a self-employed and thinking you're the only person going through certain things. And I've just seen being in community help. So a big disadvantage of being self-employed is that it can be very, very lonely. Even when you have those groups, it can still be very lonely, because sometimes your issues are very specific to you and it's very difficult to come up with solutions or different ways because you're alone. So the loneliness of it all is a major disadvantage. Yeah. Lastly, this is usually the most difficult one, and feel free to add any other disadvantages I may have left. But lastly, success is not assured. I know everybody wants to have multi-billion-dollar companies, brands, but it's not assured. The truth is, there's some businesses that are just meant to be small enough to sustain you, and there are some businesses that are going to grow and become these big corporations. And I think sometimes when you're getting into self-employment, it's a decision you need to make early on, because there is this myth that everybody has to have this big grand business, and it's not true. There are, like in Kenyan context, there are supermarkets that are a supermarket chain, and they are all over the country, but there are some supermarkets that are specific to a town, and they've been there for years and years, and they still serve the purpose. So do reflect and understand that you might not succeed, and if you don't, it's fine. You can always readjust and change things around, or you might not succeed in the way that you think, in this grand way, but it could just be enough to sustain you. So that is a disadvantage, because just how we've been programmed to think that everything's supposed to be grand, and it's not true. Yeah. So the advantages of outsourcing. I'll basically just talk about the benefits of outsourcing, and it's not going to be outsourcing versus employing. It's really up to you and depends on your business model. So I'll just talk about the benefits. So the first one is, when you're outsourcing and you're hiring someone to come and work for you, you are hiring them for a specific task where they are experts. So you do not have to train them most of the time, or maybe you just have to ensure that there is some orientation just so they get to do the work the way you want to do. But most times you're hiring someone who's already qualified, so they just do the task and they leave. So that is one benefit. Of course, even when you're hiring tailors, my advice to you is, if you're going to outsource a tailor, ensure that you understand what they are good at doing. So if they are good at jackets, then give the tailor who's good at jackets the job to do jackets. Do not give a tailor who's good at making dresses to do jackets. I know they all say they're good at everything because they are thinking about money, but always just check what the talent is really good at. Do interviews, make it a long process. Do not just settle for the first person who says they can do something. Yeah, so that's the first one. Second point, related closely to the first one, is that when you're outsourcing, you don't have to invest in extra training for the person you're hiring, because you hire them because of the fields they are in or the expertise they have for the specific task. So it reduces your training budget. So because usually when you hire someone, you have to train them. Do not think that just because you've hired a tailor, no matter how much experience they have, you always have to train them, because I've seen people who hire tailors and you don't specify even how you want things finished or how you like things done. The assumption is you've hired someone who knows. Never assume that, whether or not you've studied fashion. It's better to hire a consultant to help you orient your tailor so that you can have less issues, and put systems in place that are checklists for you to check. Even if you've not studied fashion and you own a fashion business, it's important to have something like that. I do that, so please, I'm here if you want me. We can discuss depending on what kind of, the amount of work you want, but something to consider. So when you're outsourcing as well, the beauty is that you don't have to keep monitoring the work, because the person you're outsourcing to is used to managing their own time. So that's a major benefit. Of course, if you have your checklists in place, it's easier for you to know maybe when to check if the work is being done in a specific way. But it also frees you to be able to do other things while they are doing the work you've outsourced to. So this really depends on your outsourcing capacity. If you're working with a factory, it's usually more professional in terms of the way they work. I guess also it depends on the factory you choose. If you're working with individual tailors like I do, where I outsource to individual tailors, of course, there's a bit more monitoring and checking. But if you've worked with them long enough, then it's easier to know what to expect. So my advice to you is, either way, it's a lot of work. You still have to evaluate the people you're working with, and my advice, just start with samples. Always start with samples. always ensure you have someone who's going to try the samples, a fit model, and everything like that. I will explain all that next week when I'm starting to explain the ready-to-wear process, because it's ready-to-wear is just very different from custom-made, and I know people really like treating it like it's an extension of custom-made, and it is not. So yeah, frees up your time. That was the point. The reason I would recommend outsourcing for someone who's starting a new fashion line is that you do not have to invest in your own equipment. The person you've outsourced to probably will have their own. People really underestimate how costly machines are, and apart from just buying the machine, there is a maintenance of the machine. So if you're starting a brand new fashion line and you're not sure how it's going to go, as I've already said before, you're not assured of your business, I would always advise you to outsource the labor so that you don't have to spend so much money on machinery, because the truth is your primary budget should go into production and marketing. Yes, machines are part of production. I know that people hire out machines. I don't know how wise or how that works. I've never had I've always needed a machine. Either way, I'm the type of person who, whether or not the business will survive, I will always need a machine, because I'll always sew anyway, because I love sewing. But if you are a fashion business owner and you're taking a bet and you do not know if the business will work out, I would advise that you outsource so that you know if it's worth investing in machines later on, because you need to buy the right machines. They need to be well maintained, because if you buy the wrong machines, it's also another whole thing. And they also take up space, so that means you need a workshop, and if you don't even have money to pay rent, pay salaries, buy machines, maintain machines and all that, buy equipment and everything like that, because it's not just the machines, it's the scissors and all that, it's expensive. So if you know you're not willing to do all that at a go, because you're not sure if it will work out, then it's better to outsource. So I also do help with helping fashion business owners to do small runs, sample runs, so that they can test if it's worth getting into full production or not. So it's just something to consider. I know that people who do it the opposite way. They buy the machines, they hire the tailors, they do the work, it doesn't work out, they start selling machines. So just another way of thinking about things. The last benefit that I will say, if you know other benefits, maybe you can put it down. I'm focusing specifically on fashion businesses, but I'm sure I've not exhausted all the benefits. The last benefit I would say is that you don't have to deal with employee obligations such as pay as you earn, that tax, NHIF, which is healthcare, NSSF, which is retirement benefits and stuff like that. You don't have to deal with that because you're outsourcing, and probably the person you're outsourcing to should have factored that into their costs. So that is another benefit, because it's very strict here. You have to provide benefits. Those are just basic benefits that you have to provide if you are going to employ someone. So those are the benefits of outsourcing. So I'm going to talk about the benefits of employing. One of the biggest benefits of employing someone is that you are able to monitor their work, their output. And this specifically for tailors, because in fashion, I think there's so many certain tasks that you can just outsource. But for tailoring, especially if you're doing made to measure or even ready to wear, specifically made to measure, because that's usually the most difficult to outsource. It's beneficial to just have someone you can see and check their work and train to do work specifically to how you want it to be. So that's actually a very big benefit. The problem is people think it is something that is an automatic thing, but it actually takes time depending on how willing the employee is to learn, and also the circumstances. You really have to make it worth their while, because it's really hard to retain tailors, and they can easily be poached, or they can just cause their own issues, or decide they want to get into business themselves, because they want more freedom like you. So yeah, one of the biggest benefits is that you can be able to monitor their output. Another benefit is that you'll be more assured if you bring in people, if you have people who do things in line with basically how you do things. So it's just related to the first one. So it's more about streamlining your process, whether it's you have a permanent accountant who always knows when to check the bookkeeping, to put things in line, or the tailor and how you work and how long it takes to produce certain things. And also if you are a made to measure business and suddenly you get a bulk order, you'll be able to manage that because you've trained these people and you know they'll be able to do it. So there are very many benefits like that. So it just helps you streamline your process better because you're not always relying on someone else. And I think this is usually even more beneficial when you've been at business for a while. Definitely I only recommend outsourcing at the beginning, and unless it's just, usually you do ready to wear and it's always a factory. But if you are doing smaller and smaller runs, I definitely recommend that you have your own production facility where you have your own employees, because it's very difficult to scale up to factory level. But there are people who start with factory, because fashion businesses are different. Some people actually just have businesses for outsourcing. Basically they do the production for you. So most of the time such businesses have a large investment. But if you just want to be a fashion business that's creating your own work, then definitely scale up to having more employees and with benefits and everything according to the law. Lastly, having employees means, basically I'm adding to the first 2 points. Having employees means that you'll be able to reach a level where your time will be more flexible because you have created systems and the place can basically run without you, which is just the entrepreneur dream, because it means you've moved from self-employment to entrepreneurship. And yeah, so basically it helps with time. You'll be able to streamline your process. Work can be able to go on without you. It's easier to hold meetings because everyone is in-house. It's easier to monitor and check things because you have maybe systems and checks in place. And it does take a very long time to reach this point, and I think sometimes people really underestimate it. I've seen very many people start fashion brands and close them, but I think it's because sometimes they let me just tell you the truth, just because, I think I've said this before, just because people like how you dress doesn't mean they're going to buy the outfit from you. It's just not how it works. Most of the time, people might admire how the outfit looks on you, doesn't necessarily mean they would buy it for themselves. So market research is always just important from the very beginning when you're doing something in this self-employment journey and in this journey of getting employees. So those are my points. If you have more, comment section is available. Write them down if you want. I usually check comment sections and I do respond, so please make a point of leaving a comment. Please like, share, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Before I leave, just a reminder again, I am going to be focusing in the month of June on the ready-to-wear process. So it will cover practically a lot of the things I have mentioned today. So please make a point of watching that, especially if you want to get in the ready-to-wear space. I am going to share my process because it's probably the most affordable way of doing ready-to-wear. It might not be if you don't know how to sew, and if you don't know how to make, especially if you don't know how to make patterns. You might know how to sew. Pattern making is a cost, sewing is a cost, marketing is a cost. There are so many things that I'm able to do because I can do them myself. So it's a very impractical way of doing it, but I'll show you anyway because it's not something everybody can do, but I can. So I'm just going to explain it to you and we'll see how it goes. So thank you so much for the support so far. and I guess I'll see you. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, especially like. Please like. The more you like, even if you have not shared or subscribed, although please do that as well, but the more you like, the more YouTube shares the videos with other people and more people discover it. I'm not getting the traction I would love to get because people are not liking. I appreciate the personal messages, but I'd really appreciate the likes on YouTube as well. Thank you. See you next week. Bye.